Today we're comparing two different painting apps for the Oculus Quest, Vermilion and VR Painting. I've broken it down into 7 key areas that I'm going to be looking at and showcasing in this video, which I think are integral to the applications themselves and to which I think are the best key points to talk about. Let's get started. So first up is environment. So both have significantly different environments. In Vermilion, you can choose between Mana, Loft and Pass-Through. So Pass-Through is, as you know, your own environment seen through the lenses of the Oculus Quest headset. It'll be in a black and white image, however, it allows for a little bit more relaxation if that's your kind of thing. You can also choose between day, night, and auto, which means it's reflective of whatever the time of day it is in your national area. Moving around the environment in Vermilion isn't very great. You can only hold the trigger and point at an area within a refined square within the room, and you can teleport within that. You can also change your direction. You are able to walk around on your own, but only again within that refined area. So there's not much movability within the environment. However, the sound effects do add to the immersion. So you hear, depending on the time of day, it might be birds or it might be owls, which I find is quite relaxing. The environment in Painting VR is much larger. You can't really change it in the Oculus Quest. You can only explore the skate park, but you are able to walk around using the thumbstick, or you can use the teleportation method as well using the thumbstick on the right. So you've got a much larger area to walk around. You can move the canvas around, so you do feel like you've got much more of a play area there. But as for sounds, there's not much for environmental sounds in Painting VR, but the sounds of the paintbrushes and picking up the paint cans and painting on the canvas, they are there, so they do add to the immersion. Moving on to brushes. So in Vermilion, you have a variety of brushes on a brush stand to your right hand side. With these brushes, you can also increase or decrease the size by holding up or down on the thumbstick. And if you press left or right, you can also choose between a variation of the brush that you have. So it might make it a much wider bristle, for example. When using the brushes, you can see the brushes respond to the pressure in which you are placing onto the canvas or onto the mixing palette. So you can see how hard you're going, and you can see it dragging the paint, which is nice to see. You can also see how much paint is left on the brush, which is also nice. And if you need to clean it, there's a little rag on the right hand side on your painting stand, so you just rub it on there. Painting VR, you don't have so many brushes and you can't alter the size to my knowledge. However, there are some unique brushes that you've got there. You've got a rolling brush, so a roller. You've got a very large scale brush that you can use. I tend to use it for painting backgrounds. You've got a finer brush. You've got a splatter brush in case you need to put some splatters on there. It can get a little bit messy, but it's also very fun. And then you've got your more detailed brushes. You've also got some markers as well. You've also got a spin tool, which if you attach a paint can to it, you pull the trigger and it swirls paint everywhere. It's very fun, very messy. Unfortunately, in Painting VR, you can't see how much paint is left on the brush because it doesn't run out, which is helpful in some respects, but it takes a little bit from the realism. Personally, I like the feeling of having to dip the paintbrush back in the paint. That said, you can clean the brush. There is a bucket of water next to the canvas, which you can use to reset the paint. Which does bring us on to paint. So in Vermilion, you have a palette. Now you can save palettes. So if you've mixed a few colours that you like, you can save that as a palette and use it in the future. For example, for skin tones or for whatever you like. You can mix on the palette and then you can also mix on the canvas and just play around with the colours. You can reset the palette anytime you like by pressing, I can't remember what button it is, but there's a button on the controller. I think it might be Y. So you can clean it that way. You can also use a rag, or you can just click a button in the menu to reset the palette. So mixing in Vermilion is fairly straightforward. You can mix on the canvas, providing you're on the same layer, or you can mix on the palette. You can also work with a wet palette underneath the canvas. And you can also change the settings in the menu to adjust how the paint responds and how well it mixes. So you can turn it right down, you can turn it right up. Vermilion also offers layers. So if you don't want to mix on the canvas, but you don't want to fiddle with your settings, you've got 4 layers to work with. So you just move up to the layer above or the layer below and the paint won't touch. Vermilion is an oil-based oil painting simulator, so the paint will stay wet for quite a long time. In Painting VR, the colours are nice and vibrant. The way you mix the colours in Painting VR is you have a bunch of tins of paint. You literally just pour them into one another. You do have a palette on the side, which doesn't tend to work as well, but they do also have a reference palette that you can open up and you can just point to whatever colour you want and use that. The paint in Painting VR does mix on the canvas as well. It mixes quite well. I'm actually impressed with how it works on the canvas. The only thing I think Painting VR is missing is the ability to save colours in tins. So you have a shelf on the side. It would be nice if you could save a paint into one of those paint tins and leave it there for future reference, and you don't have to keep continuously mixing every time you want to use them. Sounds, I've covered the environmental sounds when we were talking about the environment, but if we want to talk about sounds within the game and within the painting realm, we're talking Vermilion. As you're painting on the canvas, you do hear a satisfying brush stroke, so that you can hear that quite well, and hopefully it translates in the video. But as you're painting, you hear the brush strokes quite nicely. Same when you mix and paint. The sounds that you actually get are fantastic, even to the point where you're putting a brush back on the brush stand. You get a satisfying noise. You know you've put it back in, you know it's there. There is no music in Vermilion, but if you do want music, then there is a browser built into Vermilion. Go into the menu, you can pull up YouTube if you like, and play a video, and there you go, you've got some music. Painting VR, again, no music within the game, but they do have a browser pin. Pull up YouTube, whatever music player you want to use, and just play something, and you'll be able to relax. In Painting VR, the sounds of picking up paint tins are quite satisfying. The sounds of painting on the canvas and the squelches it makes as you actually do paint. You can use your hands in Painting VR, so you can do some finger painting or rub your hands and smudge the paint on the canvas, and it makes a really gross squelching noise, but it's super satisfying. I want to talk about references. So when you're painting, usually you'd want to be painting something. So you'd want to be looking at something. Some people use reference photos, some people use reference items. You might get a fruit bowl, you might want to paint that. Unfortunately, within VR, you can't just go and pick up an item. So what I tend to do is I use the browser option. I'll Google image something. So I'll search smiley face, flower, bird into the images, and then I'll pull that up. And it works on both Painting VR and Vermilion. Both got a browser implemented. Use Google Images. Now on Vermilion, you can actually project that image onto the canvas, and then you can trace over it, or you can get your references. So let's, for example, you're doing a face, and you want to get your size and your proportions right, put a dot where the eyes are. Helps you out when you're practicing. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is galleries. So we all want to showcase our paintings. We all want to be proud of them. We want to show the world. So what can you do to show your paintings once you're finished? In Vermilion, you have all of your saved paintings. You have them all there and ready. You can share them into Facebook, and you can share them in many different ways. So you can share them as a studio photo, which shows the canvas on the easel, or you can show them as just the photo itself. And I think it includes the lighting from the studio. But if you want to showcase just a neutral image without any lighting, and it's just the raw image as it is, which is what I tend to do these days, and you can do that as well. Unfortunately, that means it's in Facebook, and then you've got to log back into your Facebook to download it, which can be a bit of a pain if you don't really like using Facebook. But in game, there is sadly no gallery in Vermilion, certainly not one that I've seen yet. I would personally like a room where I could hang the paintings on the wall, invite a friend over in VR and say, look, here's my paintings, what do you think? We could do comparisons and we could hang out. It'd be great. In Painting VR, you do have a gallery, so in the environmental space that you're in, you can literally export a photo. Once you have to save it first, but once you've exported it, you can literally plop it anywhere you like on any of the walls that you see in the area. I think you can even put them on the floor, wherever. So you can display them for yourself, and I think they are working on a way you can host rooms in there as well, so that'd be great, bringing people along. Both games allow you to edit the canvas, both the size, the height, the width, but in Painting VR you can also position the canvas anywhere you like, so you can paint with the canvas on the floor, you can paint with the canvas on the wall, you can paint with the canvas on the easel. In Vermilion you can only reshape, resize and rescale, but both games give you a textured canvas with lifelike features, so when you're painting on the canvas you hear the sound, you can almost feel the canvas itself. And in Vermilion you can actually texture the paint onto the canvas, so you can layer it on thick or you can layer it on thin depending on how much you spread it and how much you apply. So those are my key points I wanted to talk about of Vermilion and Painting VR. I'm not going to compare the two, and I'm not going to score them because I don't think it's fair. I think they are two very different but very similar games. They both provide a simulated painting experience, which I think both are fantastic. However, they do both have unique features and unique strengths. So depending on which one you want to use, depends on really your painting style, or whether do you want to go down the oil simulating route? Do you want to paint oil on canvas, or do you want to have a bit of fun and explore your creativity with Painting VR? But I've made some great paintings out of both. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you'll see those. I do think they're both great, fantastic, and updates keep coming. And yeah, check them out. If you've got any comments or any feedback, or if you've got any questions about either of those, or if you want me to go through any tutorials, leave a comment down below, and we'll check it out. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.